Emily Dawson sat quietly on the edge of her twin-sized bed, staring out the window as the golden rays of the late afternoon sun streamed through the glass. Outside, children laughed as they rode bikes and chased each other in the cul-de-sac. Inside, however, it felt like another world. Emily, now 32, had spent years learning how to blend into the background of her own life. She was the kind of person who apologized when someone bumped into her, who smiled politely at parties but always left early, who constantly wondered if she was enough. It wasn't always this way. As a child, Emily was imaginative, playful, and free. Her parents, Steve and Martha, were hardworking and loving but emotionally distant, the kind who provided everything but presents. Growing up, Emily learned to be quiet to avoid conflict, to overachieve in school for validation, and to ignore her own needs because they were never acknowledged. By the time Emily reached her 20s, she had a corporate job in a mid-sized Chicago marketing firm. She lived in a decent apartment and had a cat named Pumpkin. On the surface, everything seemed normal. But deep down she was crumbling. She compared herself to everyone. Her friends with their flashy Instagram lives, co-workers getting promotions, even strangers on the street who simply looked more confident. Happiness seemed like something other people had, something always just out of reach. The turning point came one rainy Tuesday evening. Emily had just returned from work, soaked from forgetting her umbrella, and emotionally drained from yet another meeting where her ideas were ignored. She tossed her keys on the counter, changed into pajamas, and microwaved leftover mac and cheese. She sat on the floor, back against the couch, scrolling mindlessly through social media when she saw a video titled, "You deserve to be happy, even if no one told you that." She clicked on it. The speaker, a woman named Rachel Blake, didn't offer the usual clichés. She talked about her own journey through low self-esteem, burnout, and the emptiness of chasing perfection. But what struck Emily the most was a line Rachel said mid-video. Happiness doesn't come from fixing everything. It comes from accepting that you're already enough, right now, as you are. Emily paused the video and let that sentence sit. For the first time in a long time, she cried. Not the quiet tears she was used to hiding. Real sobs that shook her body. For all the years she had ignored herself, hated herself, diminished herself. Something broke open in her that night. Or maybe something finally began to heal. The next morning, Emily called in sick. Not because she was physically ill, but because she needed a day to breathe. She went for a walk in a nearby park without her phone. She sat on a bench and just existed. It was uncomfortable at first, not being productive, not striving, not performing. But slowly, a small sense of calm replaced the anxiety. That day marked the beginning of a new chapter in Emily's life. One not driven by perfection or external validation, but by a desire to truly know and accept herself. It didn't happen overnight. Growth never does. But step by step, she began to build a relationship with herself. She started by writing letters to her younger self. First, they were awkward. But then the words flowed. I'm sorry you felt so alone. You were never a burden. You didn't need to be perfect to be loved. She joined a small support group for women dealing with anxiety and self-esteem issues. First, she barely spoke. But over time, she found comfort in being seen. Not for her achievements but for her truth. She began reading books that fed her soul rather than her insecurities. Authors like Brené Brown, Glennon Doyle, and Thich Nhat Hanh. She meditated, even if only for 5 minutes a day, and practiced something called mirror work, where she looked into her own eyes each morning and said, "You are enough." Some days it felt silly. Some days she couldn't even meet her gaze. But eventually, her own reflection started to feel like a friend rather than a stranger. One evening, as she sipped chamomile tea and looked through an old photo album, she stopped on a picture of herself at age 7. Missing front teeth, wild curly hair, holding a teddy bear. That little girl deserved to feel loved. And Emily realized, with a soft smile, that she could be the one to give that to herself. A year passed. Then two. Life didn't suddenly become perfect. Emily still had moments of doubt. She still faced rejections and made mistakes. But she no longer defined herself by them. She switched to a different job that aligned more with her values, a non-profit that focused on mental health awareness. She made new friends, people who encouraged depth over surface. She even started painting again, something she had abandoned years ago because someone once told her she wasn't that good. Her art wasn't about talent now. It was about expression, freedom. One autumn morning, Emily walked through the same park where her healing journey had begun. She sat on the same bench, breathing in the crisp air, surrounded by leaves in vibrant hues of orange and red. A woman nearby was struggling to get her toddler's shoes on, clearly overwhelmed. Emily caught her eye and smiled, a genuine, grounding smile. The woman smiled back, grateful for the human moment. Emily realized that happiness wasn't a destination. It was a series of choices. Choosing to be gentle with yourself when you fail. Choosing to say no to people who drain your energy. Choosing to rest, to laugh, to be alone without feeling lonely. Choosing to forgive yourself for being human. That evening, Emily lit a candle by her window, poured herself a glass of water, and whispered a quiet thank you to herself. For choosing this path. For not giving up. For learning to be okay even when everything wasn't okay. Years later, she would write her own blog post titled, How to Be Happy with Yourself, and it would go viral. Not because it was polished or profound, but because it was real. Because it came from someone who had walked through the fire and learned to dance in the ashes. And as she ended that post, she left readers with this. Happiness isn't something you find. Something you allow. It's already within you, waiting to be welcomed home.